much cynicism in this country today. We have to make room for God. What do the prophets teach us? The prophets teach us that some are guilty, but all are responsible. And the opposite of good is not evil. The opposite of good is indifference. And Dr. King said in that great speech at Riverside Church, and I was there that night, and he said, a time comes when silence is betrayal. So what do we have to do? I think that there's something very important also in remembering that the prophets come to denounce injustice, because justice is the tool of God, the manifestation of God. Justice is the means of our redemption and the redemption of God from mendacity. The prophets offer us hope, they tell us, and we need to hear that is never the climax of history, that there must be hope. And I am here in this church, and I look at a cross, and I see that of Christ's suffering and redemption. And so too the Exodus from Egypt. We remember on Passover that the Exodus is that moment of enslavement and liberation. And so perhaps we need to cling to the prophets with that remembrance to denounce injustice, but to keep hope and know that ultimately redemption will come.
Powerful. Thank you, Dr. Heschel. And as we move forward in this conversation, I come to one who's not stayed silent for long, one who I've had to compete with over the microphone in the past. But no, I say that seriously because you have been a foot soldier and a servant leader. With the realities of racism, systemic injustice, this very crucial political moment while we are yet politically divided, can we reconcile in this country? Can we find a point of peace in this world house?
Thank you, Reverend Natasha. We absolutely can. We have to recognize that we are in the dangerous doorway of destiny. And when you arrive at the dangerous doorway of destiny, that's when all the demons come out. We must return in this country and indeed in the world. We must introduce or reintroduce a radical ethic of love. Dr. King gave us his interpretation of the Good Samaritan when he said that a certain man was making his way from Jerusalem to Jericho, and he came among thieves, and he was robbed. The man was reduced from being a human, and he became an object. For the legal scholar, he was an object of discussion. For the robbers, he was an object of exploitation. For the priests, he was an object to avoid. For the Levite, he was an object of curiosity. For the innkeeper, he was an object of a customer who would pay. Only to the Samaritan was he someone to be loved. And when I look at this, Reverend Rice, I really see that the man that was laying in the middle of the street was not a man at all. Neither was the man a woman. The man laying in the street was, in a real sense, the symbol of something that needed to be changed and reconciled, healed and loved. The man wasn't a man or a woman, it was Congress. It was not Congress, it was a country. It wasn't a country, it was a continent. It was not a continent, it was the entire world that needed to be changed. And what the Samaritan did was went into this dangerous space with this radical ethic of love and said, I'm going to touch this, I'm going to change this, I'm going to transform this. He did as Dr. King said, he put the I in the thou and went and touched and transformed. It's a dangerous place to go because the Robbers many times would set it up in a way where they would put someone in the road, and when some good person would come along, then the thieves would come out and get them. But he did not let that disturb him. He did not let the danger of the moment outshine the need for a radical ethic of love. And I think when we return to a radical ethic of love, when we see ourselves in the middle of the street, our country in the middle of the street, our nation in the middle of the street, the state of Georgia in the middle of the street, then we can begin to bring about the type of healing that causes us to reconcile and become once again the Imago Dei, the children of God, the beloved community.
My. Faith and reconciliation. Can we reconcile? Well, the answer offered by this panel today: we must be reborn. We must speak up. We must take hold of hope, as the prophets have done before, and as the prophet Dr. King that we honor today continues to encourage us to do. And thank you for sharing of your father's legacy, Rabbi Heschel. And we must take hold of love. Dr. King said in his letter from the Birmingham jail, "If I may be accused of being an extremist, may I be that extremist of love. May his witness of loving radically." You don't need to love, it's not hard to love someone you like. Anyone can do that. But to love the unlovable, to fight on the side of the unlovable from those who may be different by faith, by status, by upbringing, may we also take hold of the hope amongst all our traditions, of the call and the charge for justice, as we even heard in our Quran reading this day, and be the beloved community as we all shift and align. Thank you so much for joining us today in this critical conversation. Won't you all join me in thanking our panel? And may this conversation continue to resonate as we all think on this topic. Thank you.
Wow, that's a big word and a powerful word. And we know in the Christian faith that God has given to us the ministry of reconciliation. And on the pathway, there must be restoration. And in some cases, repairing the breach, so that as you go forward in a new relationship, you can go not quite with a clean slate, but with a new pathway forward where you respect and regard and agree not to violate again. The Word of God tells us that many are called and few are chosen. And I couldn't be more proud right now to be a Black woman, an HBCU graduate, and a member of the oldest Black woman Greek organization, Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority. As I introduce the person who will represent these United States, who's coming to us via live stream, our first woman, Black and Asian, Vice President and HBCU graduate, and my Sarah, Vice President, Kamala Harris.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. Dear Dr. Bernice King, thank you for that introduction and for all that you do every day in your role of leadership. And thank you for the invitation to address this most distinguished group of leaders. I also want to thank Presiding Bishop Michael Curry, Pastor Sam Collier, and all those taking the stage today for sharing your words and your wisdom and encouraging us to fight on, born out of the optimism that we must hold, grounded in our faith. I also want to thank members of Congress who are there and part of this important occasion, including your own Reverend Raphael Warnock, and the members of our administration who are part of this, state and local leaders, activists and organizers, for coming together on this very special day in this most special place. As some of you know, last week I was honored to once again visit your historic sanctuary, together with members of the King family. And it is an honor to be with you today as our nation remembers the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. As has been said, as is known throughout the world, Dr. King was a prophet. He was a prophet in that he saw the present exactly as it was and the future as it could be. And he pushed our nation toward that future. Dr. King pushed even as his character was maligned. He pushed even as his family's life was threatened. He pushed even as his own life was in jeopardy. He pushed for racial justice, for economic justice, and for the freedom that unlocks all others, the freedom to vote. Today, our freedom to vote is under assault. In Georgia and across our nation, anti-voter laws are being passed that could make it more difficult for as many as 55 million Americans to vote. 55 million Americans. That is 1 out of 6 people in our country. And the proponents of these laws are not only putting in place obstacles to the ballot box, they are also working to interfere with our elections, to get the outcomes they want, and to discredit those they do not. That is not how democracies work. We know the threat we face. We know that this assault on our freedom to vote will be felt by every American, in every community, in every political party. We know that if we stand idly by, our entire nation will pay the price for generations to come. You know, I'm reminded of the words of Dr. King's partner, a great American leader, and his partner in the struggle, yes, Coretta Scott King, who said, "Freedom is never really won. You earn it and win it in every generation." So many in this state have worked tirelessly to protect our democracy. You have registered voters. You have organized on college campuses and in senior living communities, at coffee shops and cookouts. You have worn out the soles of your shoes, going door to door to get out the vote. And last week, the President and I visited Atlanta to deliver a message. It is time for the United States Senate to do its job. A landmark bill, as we all know, sits before the United States Senate, the Freedom to Vote John R. Lewis Act. This bill represents the first real opportunity to secure the freedom to vote since the United States Supreme Court gutted the Voting Rights Act nearly a decade ago. And the Senate must pass this bill now. You know, it was more than 55 years ago that men, women, and children marched from Selma to Montgomery to demand the ballot. When they arrived at the state capitol in Alabama, Dr. King decried what he called normalcy. The normalcy, the complacency that was denying people the freedom to vote. As Dr. King said, the only normalcy he would accept is the normalcy that recognizes the dignity and worth of all God's children. Today, we must not be complacent or complicit. We must not give up, and we must not give in. To truly honor the legacy of the man we celebrate today, we must continue to fight for the freedom to vote, for freedom for all. Thank you all. May God bless you, and may God bless America. Have a good morning.